Okay.
Hearing aid.
So we saw yesterday, we began the new parak of Hashoichet v'Amayla. We saw in the Torah there are two distinct parshiyos. There's a parsha of Shchutei Chutz and there's a parsha of Halah B'Chutz. Shchutei Chutz is you shech outside. Halah B'Chutz is you makriv it. You burn it outside. We said that machlokes in the Mishnah. What happens if you shecht outside and burn outside? So basically, it's your pata said the Chachamim you be chayiv for that as well. We found a source for the ashara for halah and the punishment. Both and the halah is you have this you have the ashara and you have karis, and you have by shchutei chutz we had the punishment of karis, but we had a question exactly where the ashara was from. So we came up. Abaya said the ashara is from a kal v'chomer. What's the kal v'chomer? Madoch halah b'chutz. Excuse me. Madoch, an animal that you separated the heter because of b'shas heter abamos. Once the mishkan was built, you couldn't bring it, even though it wasn't an isakaris. Right? Again, you separated the animal b'shas heter abamos, guys, and then they built the Beis Hamikdash. And therefore, there would not be a chiyuv of karis. Nonetheless, there's an ashara. Kal v'chomer, you're warned. Kal v'chomer, where you have a chiyuv of karis, eino din that you're musar. Okay, that's what we saw yesterday. Now the Gemara is asking the shaila v'chi mashirin min adin. So we're beginning on kuf vav amid beis. But before we begin, I want to speak out. There's a very famous marsha. I sent it out yesterday. I sent it out. You should have it from yesterday. I sent out two things. I sent out the Parshios, and I sent out this Marsha. I think it's a mitzvah to see this Marsha, and it explains something very, very gishmak. So the Gemara in Makis discusses whether there's such a thing as Einshin Min Hadin, whether you go ahead and you learn out an Einish from a Kal V'chomer. The Gemara there is discussing if you're a royus with your sister. It says Bas Aviv or Bas Ima, so it's a Kal V'chomer. If she's your maternal sister or your paternal sister, Kal V'chomer if she's your full sister, right? Ela Einoin Shemin Adin. Good. So now there's a daya that what? There's a daya that Yeshain Shemin Adin. You would learn a daya from a din. Good. What's the svara behind it, guys? Push it. What's the svara why Einoin Shemin Adin? Because every din is a any pircha, any question does away with the Kal V'chomer. So you can learn the Kal V'chomer to give it punishment. Maybe someone will have a pircha on that Kal V'chomer, and what? Good. That would create a problem. So that's pashut. Okay. The Marsha offers something very, very unique. I'll share with you. The Marsha offers a very unique. You have it, guys. It should say Gemara Mizaracha v'chol. Right? You see it? It says Gemara Mizaracha v'lo kol zaracha. Yes, fellas. Yes. Okay, what's discussing there? What's discussing? This is someone who gives zaracha lemoilech, someone who gives his child over to the moilech, where you pass the child through fire, right? Good. The Gemara says something fascinating. It says zaracha, mi zaracha, from your children, v'loi kol zaracha. This is Gemara in Sanhedrin of Savach Talid. If you give one or two of your children over to moilech, you chayev. If you give all of the children over, you potter. You hear this? You have 3 kids. You give 2 of them, you chayiv. You give 1, you give all 3, you pata. Yes? You hear this? You hear this? Now, kosav hasmag, lavin mem. You have it? Okay. V'yesh b'zeh tam l'tshuvas haminim. With this Gemara in Sanhedrin, the smag gives the tshuva for the minim. For the Christians, minim always mi talmida yeshrei. Guys, min is an acronym. Mi talmida yeshrei noisrim. Good. Now, what was their? Why did they hold, guys? Why according to them does God punish? Because God's vengeful. In other words, God punishes you because you angered Him. You did something against Him, right? So He took His vengeance out upon you. We, of course, know that Hashem punishes as a kapara. Mises is the mechaper, right? But the minim, they hold it's like a vengeful God, this Christian value. So now, with this Gemara says the smag, we have an answer to the minim. Mifnei shebamisas bezdin mischaprim hamumasin. With the misa of bezdin, people get their kapara. V'zeh, and this person who gave over all his children, asa kol kach averi gedayla, he did such a tremendous avera. She'ein Hakadosh Baruch Hu roitza sheilos kapara. Hakadosh Baruch Hu does not want him to have a kapara. Yeah, that the reason why if you give over all your children to Melech, guess what? You don't deserve death, because you would have got death for giving over one or two kids, because then you would have got your kapara. So this is the tshuva to the minim. The reason why you die is for a kapara. So what does this have to do with me? Guys, listen to this. Ad kam l'shoynoi. Okay. Umized nira, says the Marsha, la says tam hadam minim b'chol duchte. That we say in all the places. The einoin shemin adin. Afagav the kal v'chayim midahu b'toira. Even though the kal v'chayim is one of the Yud Gimel Midas. So if it's one, we learn out many punishments in the Yud Gimel Midas. Mikol makayim ein lodon kain le'inyan einish. We don't go ahead and why the ema zes asha aveira chamura mizu. Says the Marsha, guys, a shtika einis. He says a shtika einis. This is what he says. You're learning out a kal v'chayim, right? Madach, this person gets this, and it's for a lesser thing. Kal v'chayim, you should get it. Hey, maybe the less get what the lesser avera gets, but for you it won't be enough. For you, it won't be enough. It's a beautiful, beautiful svara, a very, very famous piece. And if you didn't know it till now, Baruch Hashem, now you know it. Okay, I'll say it over again. We'll cover my dear Shvaga. Ken, you want to tell me what your Shvaga is?
Sure.
Shvaga, he thinks it's a bug on the window or something. Okay, anyway. Why is it Ein Ein Shemin Adin? This is definitely bloggable stuff. You'll see. Why Ein Ein Shemin Adin? He brings in a smag. The smag says on the Gemara, in Sanhedrin says that if you give over your child to the Melech, you chayev. Skila. What happens if you give over all your children? You pata. Doesn't make any sense. Says the smag, you know you pata? Because you don't deserve to die. It's not enough for you to die. Says the smag, and this is the answer to the goyim, the minim, who say that God punishes for vengeance in different reasons. Lenny, you'll speak to me about this afterwards, okay? We'll speak. So it says, this is the svara of the Kal V'chaymer by Ein Shemin. Why can't you learn out a punishment for Kal V'chaymer? If it's a punishment for the less Aveira, that'll be enough for the Muhammadic Aveira. And therefore you can't learn it out. So it's a different kinech. However, Ein Mashirim Min Adin. Everyone agrees Ein Mashirim Min Adin. Mehechatesa, you could learn out there's such a thing. In other words, to get punished, that maybe you could learn out according to one man Yoma. To go ahead, Ein Mashirim, to go ahead and say that to create a punishment that you won't do. To create that there's such an issa that we can't do, and therefore Ein Mashirim Min Adin. So that's where we're holding right now. We are learning out the Shchutei Chutz, guys, from what? From the Kal V'chaymer of yesterday. What was the Kal V'chaymer of yesterday? Madach alav and asay, which is when you separated the animal in the time of it was mutter. Nonetheless, you're warned not to do it, even though it's only a lav. Kol shekain, where the einish is karis, you're warned, and that's where we're holding, and that's we're going to begin. We're going to begin now the Gemara on Kuf Vav Amid Beis. So this is 4 lines up. V'chimas hirim min adin, right? Kuf Vav Amid Beis. How can you learn out a Kal V'chaymer, and we're learning out a warning of Shchutei Chutz? Afil man diyama ein shemin adin. Even man diyama says you would ein shemin adin. Eimas hirim min adin. And this is an ashar, and everyone agrees to that. Ella, you have to say, Kid Rabbi Yochanan, the Ama Asya Haba. We have a Kal V'chaymer, we have a Gzera Shava. It says by Shchutei Chutz vel Pesach oil moyed lo yeviu. It says by Halah vel Pesach oil moyed lo yevi'ena. Heviu by Shchutei Chutz yevi'enu. We know already by Halah there's an ashara. And just like by Halah there's an Haran, it says Yevi'enu, so too where it says Heviu by Shchutei Chutz, there's an ashara. So the Gezeira Shava will create the ashara. What about Ein Shim Min Adin? Ein Masir Min Adin? So let's look at the last Rashi, guys. Asya Haba Haba. Shchita me'Allah. Ksiv b'shchita. It says by shchita, lo yeviu. Uksiv b'hala, lo yevienu. So the shirish is bringing. Ugezev shava hoyelu mufnehi. Since it's extra, the words are extra. Lakach harihi kimishim efarishba. It's if it's written open in the Torah. Ve'ein ze min hadin. It's not learned out from a svara kekal v'chaymer. Sh'adam dan meyatzma. So therefore, you don't have a kasha, guys. Again, ein oin min hadin alpi svara. How can you wind min hadin? Meaning, you're a bust of a dumb. You make a kal v'chaymer. I can ask you a pirch on that kal v'chaymer and destroy it. But Megzer Shava, that's mufna, there's no kashas. Once there's no kashas, it's written before in the Torah. So therefore, haba will be our hazara for shchutei chutz. Haba, the lashon of Yevienu Teheviu, will be the raya to shchutei chutz. Okay. So what is Malahalim la'onish shalom kein hizir, afkan by shchutei chutz la'onish shalom kein hizir. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. Rava Amar Amid Aleph. Rava Amar Kid Rabbi Yoina. Rabbi says like Rabbi Yoina. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, Ki im b'makam asher yivcha Hashem sham ta'ale alesecha v'sham ta'aseh. Again, Ki im b'makam asher yivcha Hashem sham ta'ale alesecha. There you'll bring up your oilis v'sham ta'aseh, and there you'll do them. So you have a lashon of halah and the lashon of ta'aseh. So what do we do? Rabbi Yoina, asya sham. It says sham, guys. It says sham ta'ale. It says sham ta'aseh. This is a hekesh. Mala halon le'onesh elam kein is here. It says lashon of sham ta'ale. And Tala is, we know we have an Ashara for Tala. Afkan by Shchutei Chutz, Le'onish Elam Kain his here. Good. So very good. So that's a hecker. So Rabbi Yochanan learns it out from Gezeira Shava, Haba, and Rabbi learns it out from Rabbi Yoina's heckish of Sham. Sham Tala Alesecha, V'Sham Teyasa. Okay. Im Kain. Ella imken ashron malahalan le'anishalom kein hizer afkan le'anishalom kein hizer ashron muktori pinim shehelon chutz. We found animals that what you did inside and outside. In other words, you shechted inside, and you brought it outside. Muktori chutz shehelon chutz minayin. How do you know chutz? The Tanakhama said, guys, chutz, meaning shechita outside and burning outside. How do you know that? You know, right now, all I know is shchutei that you shechted inside and you brought outside out of a hashara. How do you know that you chayav for halah b'chutz on a shchutei chutz? Rav Kana Makra, the pasuk says ve'aleihem taimar al asmuchim. So we also yesterday we also happened to bring in the parsha. So if you still have that, guys, you see the Torah in front of you guys on the screen. You see the Torah on the screen. So what does it say? The first parsha is Shchutei Chutz. Everyone has a chance to go get it. So, the Pesach Amayla Eviu Lahakiv Karon Hashem. Funny. The thing Mishkan Hashem. Okay. The Manashe Yaviu Bnei Yisrael Zevachim. Now this is the parsha of what? Okay. And what does it say in Pasuk Ches? Va'aleim toimar ish mebeis Yisrael. So what is the va'aleim? Guys, so aleihem, it's the havamina now, it's like an ayin, guys. And on it, toimar ish, and you have the parsha of halah. So this vav would connect this to this. So you soymich shchutei chutz to halah b'chutz, and since I don't need it for what? For pnim, I use it for chutz. So I'm going to learn for aleihem. So the aleihem toimar al asmuchim. Al asmuchim toimar. Maskevla Rava miksiv v'aleim with an ayin, that means it goes on. It v'aleim, two bnei Yisrael ksiv. V'alef means two, doesn't mean on. Ela k'detana Yishmael. V'aleim toimar la'arei pashus. The vav v'aleihem, you're going to be ma'arav the parshiyos. So now, whatever is said in the less parsha of halah, you'll say what in the parsha of shchutei chutz. So therefore, you be chayav for halah b'chutz, shchutei chutz, halah b'chutz, shchutei b'fnim, halah b'chutz. So right now we have everything covered so far. So far, everything covered. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Asya habala ba. He has haviyu and Yevienu. Mala halon mikturei chutz Just like by what? By shchutei chutz, right? Avkam miktore chutz. So too what? In something, the carbon that you shechted b'chutz and you brought up b'chutz. So just like a carbon that you shechted inside and you brought outside, so too one that you shechted outside, you brought inside. Outside. Maskal Ravimi, Hadit Nan. According to that, guys, there's two parshas of halah. There's halah of a shechted inside and a halah of shechted outside, right? There's two. No, it's I be chayiv for burning the second parsha, the parsha of burning the being mak of the carbon. I have two top possibilities. One, I shechted it inside and I burnt it outside. Two, I shechted it outside and I burnt it outside. Good. So if you have two parshas, and we're learning from two different sources, guys. These are two different psukim. Yes. So now I have a problem. In the Gemara, in the Mishnah, the first Mishnah in Krisus lists 36 krisus, which you bring chatas b'shoigeg. L'chor you have 37. You can consider halah two separate parshias since there's two separate psukim. Fred the Gemara kasha. Hadit nan shloisha v'sheish krisus b'Torah tilsim v'sheiv have. There's a total one of 37. Since the hekesh, according to Rabbi Shmuel, or the Gezeirah Shava, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you're creating another parsha, guys. You're creating a parsha of halah b'chutz. And for the Gemara, right, the ikka hamayla, you have hamayla, the hamayla. You have mayla shchutei pnim b'chutz, and you have vehala, you have shchutei chutz b'chutz. The Gemara answers kasha. On that, the Gemara says it's fair. The Gemara says that's it's fair.
He says the teretz, but
okay, atay means that tiyufta means there is no teretz. Kosher means there's a teretz of a mishtapnis from a kasha. You know, that's the difference between kasha and tiyufta. So, in Rabbi Kivega gives terutzim, very famous for this. That's what we're holding. Okay, so right now, fellas, we began the parak. We have shchita and halah b'chutz. Is there any other avodah you do outside that you be chayiv kares for? If there's any other avodah you do outside, would you be chayiv kares for? So I shechted a b'chutz. Let's say I did a zrika b'chutz. What do you say? You don't say anything because we didn't learn the Gemara yet. Okay, so we're going to see that there are other sources, right? We're going to see the other sources. Good. Let's say what we got. For Hadit Nan, a Mishnah. We're going to see a Mishnah in a few days. Hazoyrik miktsas domim b'chutz. If a person does a zrika of dam b'chutz, not shchita, not halah, he does zrika chayiv. Minalan. After all, I would have said yipater, because the Torah says what shchita, the Torah says halah. It doesn't say zrika. So, in other words, where would you know if you do zrika b'chutz that you be chayiv? Right? Minalan. So nafkalei miditanya. We learn from the Brisa. Okay, what does it say? Let's see again this parsha. It's a wonderful device called sharing on Zoom. Pasuk Dalid. Vel pesach al moed lo yeviu lahakriv korban Hashem lifnei mishkan Hashem dam yechoshev elishahu dam shafach. What does dam shafach mean? He spilled the blood, right? That's what is a remes to srika. It's a remes. Dam shafach is a remes to srika. It's a remes to srika. Okay. Dam yichashev l'rabes hazoyrik. It says dam yichashev to be that pasuk l'rabes hazoyrik. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva oimer oy zavach l'rabes hazoyrik. Okay, let's see this. And very important to get this down, fellas. So where's the pasuk of Rabbi Yishmael? Of Rabbi Shmuel is in the parsha Shchutei Chutz Dam Shafach, and pasuk Ches fellas va'aleim toimar ish ishim beis Yisrael l'manager asher yigargu b'sleichem asher yale oila oy zavach ve'pesach l'mam yivenu. This oy zavach. So what we need, very importantly, guys, Rabbi Yishmael, he learns the zrika from the parsha of Shchutei Chutz. Rabbi Akiva learns zrika from the parsha of halah. Fellas, you see it? Look at the pasuk. He says dam shafach, guys. Pasuk dalid. That's shchutei chutz. Rabbi Akiva says oizavach. That's clearly pasuk ches. Asher yale oila is speaking about halah, burning it. So very important to go ahead and focus on their source, because we're going to bring it in for the rest of the daf. Again, we're machadish that not only shchita, not only halah, but even zrika. Where's Rabbi Yishmael's source? Dam Yichashev. Dam Shafach, that's in the parsha of Shchutei Chutz. Rabbi Akiva, Oy Zavach, that's in the parsha of Halah. That's in the parsha of Halah. Guys, good, you set up? Okay. Now, Rabbi Akiva, Oy Zavach, Rabbi says Hazarek. Rabbi Shmuel, Hay Oy Zav. Now we can go back to the tennis match. What does each one do with each other, right? So, it says, Hay Oy Zavach, my Ovid Lei. What does Rabbi Shmuel do with Rabbi Akiva's limud? Lechalek. So you would think, guys, Oyla Oizavach. You know what? Yeah, guys, what does the pasuk say? I should keep it open, but I like seeing everybody.
It says only Ola.
No, it says Oyla. Then it says Zavach. Zavach is the Shlomim. So in other words, I would say Ashayala Oyla Oizavach. I would say you only chayiv Allah that you bring both Oyla Oizavach. The Oy Kastim Mechalik, even one of them. The Oy Kastim Mechalik, even one of them. You're not for both. Again, if you didn't have the Oy, you'd say, you know when you chayiv Allah. When you did both, you brought an oila and a shlomim. The oil comes to tell me either or. That's what Rabbi Shmuel used it for. Good? He uses the oil in mechalik. You don't have to go ahead and bring both. Even if you bring one, you're going to be chayiv. Rabbi Akiva lechalik minolei. Since Rabbi Akiva learns the oizavach to teach mizrika, nafkalei miloy yivienu. You didn't bring it. What's it? One and not two. One and not two. Geschmack is anything. Rabbi Shmuel, why can't he learn it from Lo Yavienu? Why doesn't he need the Oy? Says Gemara mi boile, he needs Lo Yavienu for a din. Okay, guys, outside. We're going to be mechadesh that you have to burn a sholem, not even apart. You have to burn a sholem. If it's chasa, you're not chayiv. Now, be'emes, I would think there's more of a svara to say that what? That chasa is a problem. That chasa is less of a problem when, if I only have one, I would think that it's less of a problem of chasa is outside. Why? You go ahead, you shech the carbon outside. And now you have a limb that's not full, and you burn that limb. You put that because it's not a complete limb. It's a machlokes, guys, what exactly chasa means. I'm giving you one of the shatim just to be able to talk, okay? That the limb wasn't whole. It's machlokes exactly what it means. On the other hand, I know burning inside is not such a problem. What's the halach if something's pakaf me'al mizbeach inside a limb? What do? We throw it back on. So you see from inside, right? It's more. I would say if I'm going to use the heter, I would say inside to outside is more reason mechayev, because we see chaser is not such a problem by inside, because if it's pakam me'al mizbeach, you're going to throw it back on top. Okay, so now he uses lo yavienu for the following. Rabbi Shmuel, humi boile ala sholim uchayiv, he's chayiv for a complete, ve'enu chayiv ala chaser, and he's not chayiv for something missing. Rabbi Akiva nafkale, where does he learn that from? Milaso so. He learns it from lasso so. Oso means it should be whole. So he learns it oso, it should be whole. He learns it yavienu, it. Rabbi Shmuel, why do we need two limudim? Yavienu and oso. Chad l'mekturi penim shechasru v'helo b'chutz. One for geshochten inside and missing and bringing it outside. If I only had one, I would use it for chutz, because I would think you're chayiv for what? For inside outside, because you see inside's not a big deal because you put it back on. So he has lo yavienu for one, and he has last osoi for what? For the other. This is a raya. I might think that Miktari Pnim, something burnt inside that you're going to burn outside. I might think you're chayiv. Okay, so now he has two psukim. Yavienu and last soy for inside, for outside, inside. Rabbi Akiva only has one pasuk because he used the lo yavienu for something else. So he only has last soy. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Muktari Panim Shechasu Elo Chutz Chayiv. Einachinami, you be chayiv for that. Inside, outside, you be chayiv. Rabbi Akiva. Now, so we just explained, guys. Rabbi, what does Rabbi Shmuel do with Rabbi Akiva's limud of Oizavach? Now let's go back to what does Rabbi Akiva do with Rabbi Shmuel's limud of Dam Choshev, Dam Shafach. Rabbi Akiva, Hay Dam Yichoshev, my Avilei. What does he do with the pasuk of Dam Yichoshev, Dam Shafach, which he doesn't use for Zrika, because he learns it out from Oizavach. He goes, L'Rabbi Shchita Soif. Now, in the Parsha, what do we bring? The beginning of the Parsha. וידבר שם משה לאמור, דבר אל אהרון ואל הבנים ואל כל בני ישראל, ואמרת עליהם, זה הדבר שציווה שם לאמור, איש מבית ישראל, אשר ישחט שור, או כסף, או עז במחנה. No birds. No birds. In other words, shechting a bird b'machne, I would think you're not chayiv v'shutei chutz. In fact, I think since it's malika, I'd say yipata. In other words, you would shecht on Eilu Soif or Chata Soif, it doesn't work. We know that, right? So here's a chiddush. He uses the word dam yichashiv to teach me that you're chayiv v'shutei chutz on a kaddish stick of bird. Rabbi Kiva, yeah. Rabbi Kiva, hi dam yichashiv me'yavid leila Rabbi shchita soif. Rabbi Shmuel, nafkele me'oya she'yishachet. He learns it from oya she'yishachet. Rabbi Kiva, amalach hahumi baile. Ala shaychidu chayiv v'lei ala moilek. He's chayiv for shchita b'chutz and not malika b'chutz. Yeah, you did malika outside, you be pata. Shchita again. That's the limudim. Rabbi Shmuel nafkalei mizeh hadava. Only shchita, not malika. The Tanya asher yishchatet ainli ala shaychit behema shachat oif minalon. How do you shecht an oif outside? You chayiv v'shchutei chutz. Tamar leimer oy asher yishchat or anything yishachet. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Yachal afa moilek v'dinhu. It's kal v'chaymer. Ma shchita dein derech hechshira b'fnem chayiv. Shchita, which you can't do inside, nonetheless you do outside, you chayiv. Malika shederech hechshira b'fnem. Malika, which you do inside, that's the way you bring the carbon. Ein adin shu chayiv, certainly you should be chayiv for malika b'chutz. Tamalayim zeh adava, zeh only shchita and not malika. Rabbi Akiva amalach hahumi boile gzer shava. I need the words. I need zeh adava for gzer shava to nedarim. We learn for gzer shava. Okay, so each one has held serve. Each one learned it from himself. Yes.
But you can't use the kalachom.
What? For what?
He's using it. He's using. He says we would have a kalachom, except we need.
You'd have a kalvach to say this din, and therefore you needed a pasuk to say not. The kalvach you could go ahead and you're not learning out a punishment. You're learning out a svara. I'm creating with the kalvach. Why would you think you're chayiv? If I'm chayiv for shchita, certainly I should be chayiv for malika. I'm not. That's the svara that I would a pasuk tell me not like that. That's not a einish min adin. Is you're learning the einish, and this is not a svara. It's just a svara that why you need a pasuk. Okay, guys. So each one has held serve. Each one has held serve. And the bottom line is, where does Rabbi Akiva know Zrika from? He knows about from Zevach. Where does Rabbi Shmuel learn from? He knows from Dam Yechashiv, Dam Shafach. Good, that's where they know it from. Now, V'hodit nan, a Mishnah. We're going to see later on. HaKoimitz v'amekabel domim b'chutz potter. Minolan, if you do kemitza on a mincha b'chutz, you mekabel dam b'chutz. You potter minolan. How do you know? Okay. Fred the Gemara, umeheiche tesi the chayiv. Right? Where would you think you're chayiv? Fellas, we look in the Torah. What does it say? Fellas, what does it say? It says shchita. It says haktara. And we had a limud for zrika. Good? So why would I think you're chayiv for koimitz and Kabbalah? If I don't have a limud for it, why would I think it? In other words, I would need a limud for it, guys. I would need a limud for it. So what the Gemara is going to suggest now is the limud why you would think kamitza and haktara and Kabbalah yichayev. Good. That you have to tell me your partner. So halt cup. Umehecha taste the chayev, taste him shchita. Let's learn a memetzinu. Just like you find shchita yichayev, so too I'll say yichayev for kamitza and Kabbalah. I'll ask you the following. Guys, there's a chumrah by shchita. If you shech the Pesach and the guys are sick and we're too old to eat it, right? It's no good. You can't shech for old people. Korban Pesach for old people. We had this a while ago. For old people, right? You can't shech. So in other words, maybe shchita yichayiv shchutei chutz because it has this chumrah that you can't shecht it for old or infirm people who can't eat it. So okay, so let me go in the other direction. Teisei mizrika. In other words, I'm going through the avoidance that you be chayiv, that you would think kamitza and Kabbalah are also chayiv. So learn from zrika, just like zrika yichayiv b'chutz, so too Kabbalah and kamitza yichayiv b'chutz. Mal zrika shekein zor chayiv love misa. It's remember any avoid that's avoided tama, guys. Any avoid that's avoided tama, that's the last avoida yichayiv misa. So it's Kmitza is not avoid Tama, Kabbalah is not avoid Tama. So therefore, why would I think you're chayiv? Maybe, all right, you can't learn from Zrika. So guys, look at me. You can learn out Kmitza and Zrika, Kmitza and I'm just going to use one, Kmitza and Kabbalah from Shchita, because there's the Chumrah that you can't shech by Pesach. You can't learn out from Zrika. Why? Because Zrika is Chayiv Misa. I'm thinking that's an avoid that you're not. So why would I think that you're Chayiv? So what are we going to do now? When you don't learn out one from one, you can learn out one from two. So I'm going to learn out Kmitza and Kabbalah from between Shchita and Zrika. So Teisei mi benai, learn from both of them. Right. What would you say? This is Shchita. Zrika Teichiach. This is Misa. Shchita Teichiach. V'chazra adin, they're both avoidus and Yechayiv. Who adin, Kmitza and Kabbalah you be Chayiv. Right? In Cain, if that's the case, guys, if you would learn that, guys, listen outside. It's a little choppy. In fact, you could learn out Kmitza and Kabbalah from Shchita and Zrika. Those are avoidus Yechayiv b'chutz. So to these other two, you be chayiv b'chutz. Now, what's the raya you don't? Because I had a pasuk for Zrika. I had Dam Yechoshev or I had Zevach for Zrika. Because I could learn out Zrika from Shchita and Halah. I could learn out Shchita from Zrika and Halah. What's our rule of thumb? If you could learn it out, why does the Torah write it? Ella, what do you have to say? We're not going to darshan such a memetzino. When the Torah wrote Zrika, which I could have learned out between Shchita and Allah, I won't be able to go learn out Kmitza and Kabbalah from Shchita and Zrika. So it's a raya that what? It's a raya that what? It's a raya you don't make such a limit. When you needed Zrika, you don't have a limit of this memetzino. Memela, we don't need a pasuk for Kaimitz and Kabbalah since there's no hava meaning to mechayev. In other words, when going back to the beginning of the Gemara, says the Gemara, "Hakaimis become dam v'chutzpata minalan." The Gemara says, "Minalan." Why would you think you're chayiv? In other words, I don't need a source. Einachinami. You don't need a source because there's no way to be mechayiv me. I have a memetzinu. I have a raya that we don't learn that memetzinu. What's the raya? I needed a pasuk by Zrika. It's a beautiful, logical way of thinking. Let me put it in different terms. If I could go ahead and figure out A, I could figure out A. Yeah, there's no reason to write. If I could figure out A, right, and say Yechayah for A, I need a pasuk to tell me Yepata. Yeah, good. I have a pasuk for A. I have a pasuk for A. That's the pasuk. I have a limud. I have a limud for Zrika, that Zrika should be chayiv. No, excuse me, not Zrika. That Kmitza and Kabbalah should be chayiv. What's my A? That's the memetzinu between Shchita and Zrika. Good? Now, so therefore, if I would have that to be mechayiv me, I need a pasuk to pata me. Yes? Good. I'll bring you a raya, we don't say that. Because I have B. I have Zrika. Is Zrika chayiv? Yes. But not because of a memetzinu, because of a pasuk. If I darshan that memetzinu, I would not have to write a pasuk. The fact that I wrote a pasuk shows me I don't have that memetzinu. If I don't have the memetzinu for B, I don't have it for A. If I don't have it for A, that means there's no svara to say Kmitza and Kabbalah should be chayiv. Memela, Minola, there's no reason for any pasuk. Now, where would you say Zrika is chayiv? Where would you see it? Let's see it inside. Right? Let's see it inside. Guys, if you're going to say the memetzina by A, lo yomer Zrika, don't write a pasuk by B because I'd have the same memetzina by B. V'teisei mibenaya. V'teisei, how would you learn it out? Mishchita. Malashchita shkein nefseles. You'll say that Zrika, you can't learn Zrika as a chumrah that it's nefseles shlosh seimachlin for the old people. Teisei mahala shkein yeshnai b'mincha, but it doesn't exist by what? It doesn't exist. Zrika it doesn't exist by mincha. So v'teisei minaya, I'll learn out just like shchita and hala and burning are avoidis, and you are chayiv. Who are din Zrika you chayiv. Good, and yet we don't do that. What's the why you don't do that? Rabbi Yishmael, Tam Yechashev, Rabbi Akiva, Zevach. Lahachi ksiv kro lemeimar. Therefore, the Torah tells us by Zrika that you don't learn it out. So Memela, if I don't learn out B, I'm not learning out A. If I don't learn A, you don't need a pasuk to tell me why you are chayiv, or why you should be pata, because there's no reason to think you're chayiv. There's no reason to think, because that memetzino of A doesn't exist. How we doing, guys? Good. Okay. Amravo. Shachet v'zorek. Okay, guys, let's go. Eye contact, please. Little hakdama. According to Rabbi Yishmael, where do you know Zrika from? You know it from Dam Choshev. Dam Choshev is in the Parsha of Shchutei Chutz. Again, there's two Parshas. There's Shchutei Chutz and there's Alaba Chutz. Like Rabbi Akiva, where do you know it? You know from Zevach. That's in the Parsha of Allah. So now, what happens if you shecht and do Zrika? Is it Chayiv 1 or 2? Like Rabbi Yishmael, you should be Chayiv 1 because it's in the same ballpark. Like Rabbi Akiva, you should Chayiv 2 because Zrika is in the Parsha of Allah. And just like Chayiv for Shchita and Allah is two separate things, so too Shchita and Zrika should be two separate things. So it's nafkamina where they learn from, and that's what the Gemara is going to address right now. Says the Gemara. Amrabavo, Shachat v'Zorak, not Shachat v'Hala, Shachat v'Zorak. The Dir Rabbi Yishmael, who learns out Zrika from Shchita, because Dam Chashev, Chayiv Achas, you only Chayiv once. The Dir Rabbi Akiva, who learns it out from Zevach, which is in Hala, Chayiv Shtayim. Just like you Chayiv Shchita and Hala, 2, you be Chayiv Shchita and Zrika, 2. Abayama, Afilu Dir Rabbi Akiva and Chayiv Achas, you only Chayiv once. Dam Akra, Shom Taseh, Akosavasa Lekulan. The pasuk says, Shom Tala Olesecha, V'Shom Taseh Kol Asher Anochi Mitzavcha. The pasuk says in Devarim. So Shom Tala Olesecha Hala, V'Shom Taseh. What does the Taseh mean? It makes it Shom Taseh Akosav also makes it cool one avoida. So therefore, the Shchita and the Zrika will be one avoida. Zorik v'Hala. Let's say you do Zrika and v'Hala. The Rabbi Yishmael Chayiv Shtayim, because he says Zrika is from Shchutei Chutz. The Rabbi Akiva in a Chayiv Alachas, because he says Zrika is from Hala. Abayama, I feel the Rabbi Akiva Chayiv Shtayim, you be Chayiv once. Lahachi Palginu Kra. Therefore, because the Torah makes two different things. Sham Tale, Sham Taseh. Now, if Taseh is going on all the avodas, why'd you take out Hala? Why'd you take it out? It's to teach me you Chayiv twice. Shachev v'Zorek v'Hala. Let's say you did all three. The Rabbi Akol Chayiv Shtayim. According to everyone, you be Chayiv Shtayim. Rabbi Yishmael, you be Chayiv one for Hala and one for Shchita, and Zrika will be Nichnas the Shchita. According to Rabbi Akiva, you be Chayiv for Shchita, and Hala and Zrika would be as one. So you did all three, but you only Chayiv 2. Rabbi Yishmael, who goes ahead and learns out Zrika from Shchita, you Chayiv on the Shchita Zrika 1 and the Hala 1. According to Rabbi Akiva, who learns out the Zrika from Hala, you be Chayiv 1 for that and 1 for the Shchita. Tan Rabbanan, the pasuk says, "Oy asher yishchayt michutz lamachne," or it says, "Or asher yishchayt michutz lamachne," or you shecht what michutz lamachne. Now, what do you mean chutz lamachne? When chutz lamachne can mean all three. When are you chayav for shchutei chutz? Right? When are you chayav? At which point in time you chayav for shchutei chutz? Where are you shechting, guys? Chutz the 3 machnes, chutz the 1 machne. One machne, right? In other words, you leave the azara and you're in your machne leviyah. That's it. Your machne leviyah. That's it. You're gone. You leave the azara. You be chayiv even in Ezras Nashim. You be chayiv in the Ezras Nashim, guys. The Ezras Nashim, right? With the 4 corners. That's not the base. That's machne leviyah. That's machne leviyah. You be chayiv right then and there, yeah. But how you know that? Maybe it's only 3. So the pasuk says, "Tanabanan oyshe yishchat michutz lamachne." It says chutz lamachne. Yachol chutz l'shleisha machnois. I might think it's outside all 3, like by Param and Esrafim. Talmud Leimar oyez b'machne. Oyez b'machne. So guys, it says chutz lamachne and it says b'machne. So it says chutz lamachne and it says b'machne. Good. Iba machne yachol ha'shochid oila b'darim yechayiv. Guys, an oil has to be in Kacha in the north. What happens if you shecht in the south? It's not the right machne, right? So I might think yechayiv. Talmud Leimar oy mechutz lamachne. Ma chutz l'machne miyuchid shein roy l'shchitas kachim at all. L'shchitas kol zevach yotzedarim. Excludarim shafal pi shein roy l'shchitas kachim kedoshim roy l'shchitas kachim kalim. So Gary has two limudim. Machne means one, meaning you don't need all three. Chutz l'machne to teach me darim. Chutz l'machne to teach me a darim would not still be. It's only chutz l'machne outside the azara, but inside the azara it's not considered south. The chutz l'machne for oila, which is only in the north. Okay. Says the Gemara, Ama Ula, Hashoichet al gagoy shel heichel. What happens if you shecht on the gag on the roof? Now, is that a makom shchita? Is that considered shchutei chutz or not? Right? Hoyel vein, right? Hoyel vein al gagoy shel heichel chayev. You'll be chayev for shchutei chutz. Hoyel vein roy l'shchitas kol zevach. Since it's not roy for shchitas kol zevach. Since it's not roy for shchitas kol zevach, right? I would say what you're chayev for. This is what Ula says. I would think Yechayev. Why? It's not right for Shchitas or Zevach. Maskala Rava im Kain, if that's the case, Nichtav Kra, the pasuk should write, Asher Yishchat mechutz lamachne, just write chutz lamachne. V'lei boy, you won't have to say Val Pesach el Moyed. Why do you have to say Al Pesach el Moyed, fellas? If you tell me chutz lamachne, it means even in the oil Moyed itself. Don't write Al Pesach el Moyed. Lamali. So Lav Lamuute, you must be you wrote it. That to go, it's possible. That what? That even if it's in the oil mayed, once it's not, you're not chayiv, pirish. Since the gag is in the airspace of the oil mayed, you pata. So that's what Rabbi says to Ula. That you be pata, again, because if all you tell me, guys, all you tell me the following. Guys, look at me. Ula said one din. If it's not roy for zevach, you're chayiv for shchutei chutz. A gag is not roy lezevach. Now, where's the source not roy lezevach? Chutz l'machne. So write chutz l'machne. Don't write al pesach el mayed. Ella, what's the reason it says well Pesach Omaylayaviu? To tell me once you're in the oil Mayed, even though it's not royal Pesach, the Shchita, you pata. So I'll be pata on the gag. That's Rava. Fred Gemara Rava, right? One who says Pesach Omayed, why do you have to write El Pesach Omayed B'Machne? Why do you have to write Chutz L'Machne Lamali? Why do you have to write B'Machne Chutz L'Machne? Once it's the oil Mayed, that's all I need. If you look at Rashi, guys, Nichtav El Pesach. Go down right before it gets wide, about 8-10 lines up. Nichtav el Pesach, lemute gagoy, that would exclude gag, lemute oile bedarim, and it would exclude arim in the south. Shari bo el Pesach, you came to the Pesach, umemele mishtama chiyuvoy b'machne levia, shleivio el Pesach. I would know, guys. Once you know you have to be in the Pesach el Mayed, I know chutz l'machne. I know. Not the roof. I know that machne levia. I know because it's not the el Mayed. So why do I machne and chutz l'machne? Pesach el Mayed would do the job. So in other words, guys, if the gag you're not chayiv for, certainly the darim you're not chayiv for. Guys, if you're not chayiv on the roof in the oil mayed, would you be chayiv in the darim in the oil mayed? So I don't need chutz l'machne. Why? What does machne teach me? Outside one machne. Once you say Pesach oil mayed, I know chutz for outside one machne. You would know those two words are extra. If Rabbi's drush is correct, those two words are extra. Im Kain, Nichtav el Pesach el Moyed, b'machne and chutz l'machne lamali, lav lasuye gagay, must be to include gagay. Rav Mari, lasuye kula b'fnim, v'tzavar b'chutz, that the animal's inside and its tzavar is outside, or it's tzavar b'chutz, says more tzavar b'chutz pshita. I don't need a pasuk to tell me if you do the shchita on that animal's head is outside the azar. I don't. Am I kop rachmana shchita v'shchita b'chutzi? And the whole hakpad is shchita, and the shchita was outside. So I don't need the pasuk to tell me that of chutz l'machna. El asuye kula v'chutz. The animal's totally outside. It's savar b'fnim. You hear this, guys? If the animal is outside, and your head is inside, and your shecht inside, you chai for shchutei chutz. That's the chiddush. That's the chiddush of what you had to tell me chutz l'machna. That's the chiddush. I will stop over here.
Okay.
Again, mazel tov to